Greetings, Native Land Pod. My name is Keith. I'm from DC. And recently you were all talking about the redistricting of Texas. Well, here's my idea, and I brought this before, is that we redistrict the whole nation, which means we would revise the Electoral College to increase the representation of representatives in the House of Representatives. Right now, we're severely underrepresented. My idea is that we would take the population of the smallest state union, which is Wyoming right now, that has 580,000 people. We would divide each state by the size of Wyoming and increase the representation in each one of those states. For example, the representation in California would increase from 55 to 67.1. You ask us, what do we do at point one? Well, we would have a chief electoral, and that chief electoral would have a voting power of 1.1. And that he, as far as the national election of president, you only have a power of 1. Again, that is my idea, is to increase, revise it. We can squash all this redistricting all over the state. We can just do a ratification of Electoral College, get it done. Thanks. That's my recommendation. Thanks for having me.
All right. So we got a recommendation there on how we might make the Electoral College map look a little bit more fair, Angela. And just before we take your response, I just wanted for the viewers to help us understand where we sit today, which is, yes, Wyoming is the lowest populated state in the union. They have 2 U.S. Senate seats, as every state in the union has 2 seats. And they've got 1 congressional seat. And the questioner was right, Mr. Keith. They said that about what? Half? No, on average, the each member of Congress represents about 761,000 people. Wyoming sits under that at about 550 plus thousand folks living in that state. However, the Constitution limits, actually, it's law that limits since 1911, I believe. The practice has been that the Congress will be capped at 435 members, and that the minimum number of people required to constitute a seat will basically be divided based off that 535 members amongst the various states, with, again, Wyoming, that not being applicable because Wyoming will maintain 1 seat unless it increases beyond that average number, 760 plus population, but they will maintain 1 seat. Right now, the problem with the recommendation is that we would have to grow the House of Representatives pretty substantially if we began dividing the U.S. population basically by 550,000 people per every seat in Congress. The number of seats are capped, 435, and then obviously the U.S. Senate is capped at 2 members per state. So I don't know. Do you have a reaction to that idea? I just wanted to set the plate so that folks, sort of had a sense of how we got or where we are.
Well, I think that you've done a great job at answering Keith's question or responding to Keith's ideas. Keith always has big ideas. For those of you at home listening, because you are welcome home, we always welcome your big ideas, no matter how crazy, large, miraculous they sound, or basic, and we should have been did that. Yeah. We're here for it. So please make sure you continue to send in your questions, thoughts, and ideas, and your challenges to the host, especially when you say, Angela, Miss Cross. I was going to say, Andrew, what is fascinating about this redistricting conversation to me is that it's not new. We have seen, it's not just Texas. Right. Of course, recently in Missouri, the governor said that he's interested in redrawing the lines where the first Black member of Congress in Missouri sits, in Kansas City, rather, not in all of Missouri, but in Kansas City. Who's a former mayor of Kansas City, my former boss, the former CBC chair, Congressman Emanuel Cleaver II. They're talking about redrawing the line so that he would not be in a district that represents Kansas City anymore. We are hearing these same things about Louisiana. As you know, was an open court case, Calle in Louisiana, that would challenge again the seat that Cleo Fields now operates or occupies in the Baton Rouge area. What I think that we have to wrestle with here is why. And the thing that is most troubling to me, as you all know, NLP listeners, I had Jolanda Jones on, who's a state rep in Texas representing the Houston area yesterday.
This week, yeah.
Yes, sorry, this week, in case you didn't hear it. We record on Wednesdays. I'm sorry, y'all. Andrew, I have ADD bad today, and now when you do that, I can't remember what I'm saying.
Had Jolanda Jones. Yes.
I had Jolanda Jones on yesterday, and she is one of the members of the Texas delegation that has fled the state to prevent Governor Abbott from getting this very unconstitutional, hyper-racist redistricting and gerrymandered process done in an off year. As a reminder, y'all, as Andrew just said, it is 2025. This happens in 2020. Generally, by the time we get to about 2022, by the time we get to a midterm election, this has been asked, answered, and resolved, even if we don't like the outcome.
Right.
So what has happened is there was an off-year test. And Jolanda brought this up on the podcast on Tuesday. There's been an off-year test. That off-year test didn't start with Texas. The off-year test started with North Carolina. And Andrew might be ready to fight me because he might say, well, they really tested it out in Florida first. But at least in Florida, it was attached to the 2020 census. This in North Carolina last year was just randomly in 2023. Republican leaders decided that they wanted to redraw maps to see what would happen and to restrict the number of Black elected officials in North Carolina. So now that case is going to a three-panel court in close to Winston-Salem to determine whether or not it's constitutional or unconstitutional. Here's the bottom line. We're watching Texas legislators flee.
Yeah.
But what we're really watching, Andrew, I think for people who don't understand redistricting, what is that? Gerrymandering, what is that? Why should we care? All people right now are watching is like, they on the run and we here for the fight.
Yeah.
My favorite thing about this is you brought up earlier, your memory is so good. You brought up earlier what happened when Texas state legislators did this in 2021.
Yeah.
And you said that is how Jasmine Crockett met her rise to fame.
Yeah,
so
naturally, how a lot of us came to know her and see her.
Let's watch that clip.
Yeah.
We have not committed a crime. And so under the U.S. Constitution and the Texas Constitution, you can't arrest people that haven't committed a crime. So we've not committed a crime. What can happen is we can be detained. So we can have someone come and get us, but that's so long as they have jurisdiction. And I know that the governor may believe that he's president now, but he's not, and hopefully will never be the president of these United States. But he does not have jurisdiction over all United States. He has jurisdiction over Texas. And so it's actually our sergeants in the House that it says in the rules that they can actually go after us. The law is still unclear as to whether or not the speaker can then go ahead and say, hey, we're going to deputize these DPS officers, and these officers can go after them. But even still, their jurisdiction would not extend outside the state of Texas.
So this is such an important point, Angela, that you bring up, because we're hearing a lot of conversation right now, a lot of blunder out of the governor of Texas saying they're creating, he's now said or issued a writ to go and bring these members back to Texas to arrest them.
Warrants.
Issue warrants for them on a civil law citation, if you will. So Jasmine, Congressman Crockett, who many of us got introduced to through means like Don Lemon, through her interviews that she did the last time Texas tried to try some corrupt stuff. And her comment, Angela, as I listened, is just as apropos today as it was, back in 2021 about the jurisdiction of the governor to come after them and to arrest them. But your point was, people are saying that they're fleeing the battle, fleeing the fight. Talk about how their fleeing is not, running from the fight, but in fact bringing the fight directly to the jaw of the governor and to the Republican-led legislature.
Well, you know what I love about the strategy is, one, we keep saying in this moment, we don't have to go and create new tactics. Andrew, I love what you've done also on your solo pods, where you train people how to organize. Yeah. And this is one of those tactics. The Texas state legislature has been engaging in fleeing as a strategy since 1870. It is not new. We say there's nothing new under the sun.
That's right.
We can fight with old tactics and just update how we use those old tactics and tools. They are doing that right now. And what Jasmine is saying is like, look, he can issue a warrant. It doesn't have any jurisdiction outside of the state.
Right.
And I think that's so important for people to realize. I also think there's something that gets in the psyche of a Democratic governor, right? That may have lacked the courage, the political will to engage in this type of fight. But now they may have a little sauce because the Texas Dems who are fleeing and walking and embodying courage, they got to be like, well, I can't just let y'all hang out there by yourselves. So let me meet you where you are. One of those governors who surprised me, and we heard this from Mehdi earlier, is Governor Hochul in New York. Let's run what she said recently.
And I have news flash for Republicans in Texas. This is no longer the Wild West. We're not going to tolerate our democracy being stolen in a modern-day stagecoach hoist by a bunch of law-breaking cowboys. Americans don't want a system that's stacked against them. They believe in fairness. It's fundamental. And I'll tell you this, they're done with the chaos. They're done with the cruelty. And I would say they're ready to vote Republicans out of power in Washington, certainly in the upcoming 2026 elections. Republicans know this. They've seen the polls. They know they're sliding downhill because Americans are rejecting their policies. So this is why they're fighting. They want to. They know they'll lose the elections, but to subvert the will of the people, they're hell-bent on rigging the system. Rigging the system is un-American. All's fair in love and war. That's why I'm exploring with our leaders every option to redraw our state congressional lines as soon as possible. Our state legislative leaders, Carol Heastie, Majority Leader Andre Stewart-Cousins, they're on board, as are their members. We're already working on a legislative process, reviewing our legal strategies, and we'll do everything in our power to stop this brazen assault.
Andrew?
Angela, tell us, so why for you was that a surprise? And I'll say my piece on it.
Because she say all kind of crazy stuff all the time. I be mad at her most of the time.
Yeah.
So I just was like, oh, okay, that's what we're doing. We got to fight. And I love that Speaker Heastie was right next to her. The thing that I appreciate about this moment, we keep saying that people want to see a fight. We keep hearing that too, right? But part of the fight isn't just this resistance tactic. People want to see an alternative. That alternative is the vision of the opposition. What you get to see from her comments is what the vision of the opposition is. So the resistance was brought to you by the Texas state legislators, right? The Democratic legislators who left. The opposition strategy and the vision is brought to you by those who can govern. And they'll say, if this is what the right wants to do, this is what those who are representing a political entity that will be the demise of our democracy, we're going to show you how we're going to fight back against this democracy. Sure, ideally, we'd love to have this bipartisan or nonpartisan commission that does this great thing. But in the absence of people who are willing to fight on an even and level playing field, we gonna meet them in the mud.
Yeah.
And so they're saying we're not going to let them imbalance the scales of justice. Wherever they create an imbalance, we're gonna set
rebalance it. Yeah.
That's it. And
Yeah,
I think that is what a resolution and an alternative looks like. So resistance should not stand alone. Resistance should be met with resolution. And that is where governors, those who can govern, can meet folks in the middle. And I think that's what people want to see.
Yeah. And just so our listeners understand what the governor and even we're referring to when we talk about this imbalance and the changing of the rules, as it's already been established, these processes for changing congressional maps happen after the census. Typically between the change in the census and maybe 2 years out, mostly by and large, litigation has been settled. And those maps are now the maps that are in place, with some very, very large exceptions. Those maps are established within time, and then new members to Congress are elected. In this case, the rigging comes in, y'all, and that Texas is saying, all right, we're 5 years in to this census. Why don't we, to advantage, in fact, they were instructed to do this. Let me be clear about this.
Yeah.
They were instructed by Donald Trump to change their maps to produce 5 more Republican congressional seats. This is basically Donald Trump calling Raffensperger in Georgia and saying, hey, go ahead and find me 198, whatever, more thousand votes so that we can win this race, right? We all knew that was illegal. We all knew that that was a foul call. So he made that foul call again on this occasion to the governor of Texas. Governor of Texas said, oh, yeah. Why don't we go ahead and do that? Let's find you 5 more seats. Okay, we'll find you the seats that you want so that for the seats that we may lose coming up in the midterm elections, thereby putting Democrats in control of the House of Representatives. And if they stuck together, they could basically end at least the legislative agenda for Donald Trump for the remainder of his term in office. So high stakes. But in this case, they are going about it by breaking the rules, by basically saying they haven't gotten any brand new numbers of population. They haven't had all these new folks moving to the state in this period of time. What they're going to do is they're going to take seats that right now Democrats hold. They're going to move huge sums of Democrats out of those districts that create Democratic seats, put them into strong Republican seats by breaking them up and basically creating a situation where they could not elect a Democrat if their full breath and body were to go out and vote wholesale to elect Democrats. They couldn't do it anymore because those Democratic votes would now be broken up and spread out.
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.